Both the House and the Senate are back in session this week. We've got about 2 weeks before the Memorial Day recess, so a lot of what they're doing on the floor is wrapping up business so that they can take the week off, and when they come back in June, there'll be a lot of appropriations matters on the floor. But for this week, the House is considering the Defense Authorization Act, and the Senate has 2 trade-related bills on the floor. There are 2 key hearings that we're following this week. The first is going to be a full committee hearing in the House Financial Services Committee focused on data security. This is an important hearing because it's the first time this year that we've seen a hearing on data security issues in the Financial Services Committee, and it comes shortly after Randy Neugebauer and John Carney introduced their Data Security Act. So we're very interested in this hearing. We're going to send a statement up for the record with our coalition, and CUNA is also going to submit its own statement. The second hearing is in the Housing and Insurance Subcommittee of the House Financial Services Committee, and it's going to focus on the TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosure Regulation. Before going into recess a couple weeks ago, Representatives Stephen Pierce and Brad Sherman introduced legislation to delay the enforcement and litigation of this regulation until the end of the year in order to give credit unions and other lenders an opportunity to test how their disclosures work with real-time transactions. We're very supportive of that legislation. It's going to be one of the issues that this hearing is going to cover, and hopefully a precursor to the legislation moving through the process. Last Friday, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Richard Shelby announced that the Banking Committee was going to hold a markup on May 21st on the Financial Regulatory Improvements Act. This is a bill that has not been released publicly yet, but based on what we've seen since the beginning of the year, we expect that it's going to include provisions aimed at reducing regulatory burden for credit unions and other financial institutions. It wouldn't surprise us to see provisions like the Privacy Notification Act or exam fairness, provisions related to qualified mortgages or improving the definition of rural areas. Those types of things it would make sense to include in a bill like that. So we expect the legislation will be released publicly later this week. We're going to analyze it fully, and we'll be working with the committee as they approach the markup to make sure that it addresses our concerns. So later this week, we're going to see the first version of this legislation. And really, the chances for its long-term success are dependent on the scope of the package and the details of the provision. So Senate Democrats, the President, they've both said that we're not going to support anything that dramatically changes the CFPB or alters the Dodd-Frank Act. There's also some concerns that the legislation might include provisions that go beyond just addressing the regulatory burden of credit unions and small banks. So the extent to which the legislation is broader in scope or deals with those issues that frankly everyone knows are off limits from the perspective of Senate Democrats and the White House, that will complicate the enactment of the legislation. But even if what the Senate Banking Committee is working on doesn't ultimately become law as that package, there'll be other opportunities as well. We've been talking with appropriators about using that process to get some of our priorities through. And of course, there's always the hotline process in the Senate for issues that are truly non-controversial. And we've used that successfully in the past, getting the IOLTA legislation enacted and also the ATM disclosure bill a few years ago. So this is an important step in the process, the Banking Committee markup, but it's by no means the end of the process. Even if the legislation gets reported out on a partisan basis, there's still light in the reg relief agenda. At this stage, it's really important for everyone in the credit union system to stay engaged in this process. Between now and the markup, there's going to be a number of things that will be flying on News Now. We may send out some information through the advocacy update, but please pay close attention because we're laying the groundwork, hopefully, for some meaningful reg relief in the long run. Also important, if your state league is coming to Washington for a Hike the Hill, that you're ready to talk about these issues, and we've got a number of resources on our website that can help you with that. But it's very important right now that we stay engaged.